Righto guys, the big tariff announcement date is tomorrow. A lot of the market is pending and waiting on that date, which is essentially 7 a.m. tomorrow morning, April 3rd, Melbourne time. Donald Trump is going to be announcing the tariffs, which has been, waiting now for probably a week or two. The market is being super volatile. The big question is the time to invest now? Should we wait? And is the market going to come back? There's a few things I want to dive into, including my strategy, including how I'm allocating, including the altcoins I'm going to be looking at, already invested in, and I'm adding to those positions. But more importantly, where and what are the tailwinds and headwinds that we need to be looking at if we're looking to deploy capital, or should we wait and hold? I think right now, definitely wait, right? In terms of tomorrow's announcement, it could go either way. It's a flip of a coin. I had a member conversation yesterday, a new platinum member. He was investing, he had $1 million that he wanted to invest. There is no harm in waiting, guys. I think patience is the big key here. I think a lot of people get very excited on a couple of green candles, and we want to sort of dive in and not miss out. If anything, yes, maybe ladder in and start to DCA into some of the top assets. But I really want to showcase to you why I think that we're going to come out of this correction at some point. It could be as early as tomorrow, but it could also be as early, as late as a couple of months away, pending the discussion and announcements tomorrow. So the key levels here and where I think we are from a market perspective is, we went through this consolidation phase, middle of last year. We kind of range between, that sort of $73,000 level and $52,000 level, about that sort of 30% consolidation period. I think we're going and starting that period now. I think we could consolidate and chop around here for a little bit. I think Bitcoin's holding up really, really well considering the stock market and how, much the stock market has fallen off over the last, a couple of 3 or 4 months essentially because of the uncertainty in the macro space. Altcoins have taken a huge beating, over the last 30 days. Essentially every sector is down. Ethereum especially has been kind of, very painful to watch. But again, Bitcoin has been this thing, it continues to hold up, and it's why I've only been really stacking Bitcoin predominantly over the last year, and will continue to only stack Bitcoin based on how I'm seeing the separation of Bitcoin and the altcoin market, really over the last little bit. I want to share with you a slide here. You've got to really be selective at the moment on the altcoins you're adding to your portfolio. And you can really see a sharp drop off on the altcoins market cap, which we haven't seen in a long time against Bitcoin. And really that is because investors are not looking for risk on assets right now. Gold has hit all-time highs. The stock market from a tech stock perspective has sold off massively. Investors are not looking for low cap altcoins right now, any altcoins at all. One of the big things that I've really been pushing on my content and in my personal portfolio is really to continue to build up a large percentage of BTC. If we look at, Bitcoin dominance is at 4 years highs at 62%, is continuing to grind higher. I do not see this turning around until we get through this tariff announcements, until we see quantitative tightening slowing down, if not stopping, and we see rates coming down. Is it a good time to accumulate alts? I think some alts potentially you could look at. I'll talk about some of those alts I'm looking at in a second, but there is, from a risk to reward perspective, the downside is much further from an altcoin side versus a Bitcoin side. Like the fact that Bitcoin is holding up as well as it is considering this sell-off in the stock market, I think this is hugely bullish. And fundamentally, as I've been talking about on the channel for so long, there's so much great stuff happening in crypto, right? Whether it be Donald Trump, pushing forward the Bitcoin strategic reserve. We've got even Larry Fink, if I can see my tab here, talking about how the Bitcoin could, replace the dollar as the world currency because of the national debt. This is really massive stuff. And I think, from a compounding returns perspective, looking at 40% on BTC, it's pretty attractive, right? You're not really getting that anywhere else. However, I do think the altcoins will rebound, at some stage, which we'll talk about in a second. But that big sort of announcement is tomorrow morning, Australian Eastern Daylight Saving Time, 7 a.m. Trump will be sharing that announcement. The WhatsApp here piece is just for our members, where we sort of update what we're seeing and what we're seeing in the market. We just had an update with them, and really, the point of it is I think just wait through and let's see what happens tomorrow, right? All risk assets are doing it tough. It's not just crypto. Crypto is down, quite substantially. But in terms of, previous, corrections, it's pretty much in line, if anything, less of a correction than where we could be, right? If you look back in the green here in that 2020 bull market, we had a number of 50, 60% pullbacks. And, At the moment, Bitcoin's down about 30%. And considering what's happening over in the US, I think that's, really, really positive, right? ETF inflows obviously are down, institutional inflows are down, but I do think that the strength that Bitcoin is showing is really admirable. And I think that's why I continue to be, very bullish medium to long term. The tailwinds, as I mentioned before, like we've got quantitative tightening slowing down, the 50 basis points average expected rates cuts is coming. We do have the M2 money supply growth and also just a friendlier regulatory environment. Like if we were looking at where we are now from a fundamental perspective, a year ago, we'd be over the moon, right? It's just because of these macro factors that are sort of holding us back. I think the big question a lot of people have been asking, like, is the 4-year cycle dead? I mean, yes and no. Like I do think that for starters, like the 4-year cycle has always been correlated with economic growth from a supply perspective. It's also aligned with elections. It's also aligned with obviously the halving. There's been a lot of things that, like, it's not just one thing that creates the 4-year cycle. I do think that Bitcoin is just going to continue to grind higher over the next few years. And yes, I think it'll grow regardless of this 4-year cycle. Like, yes, do we have a bear market? Yeah, I do think so. However, I think we're going to be more and more aligned with the stock market over time. And I think a lot of the altcoins will probably not come back from this. Like we're seeing cycles within cycles, i.e. the meme coins and AI, pushing even faster pace than ever before. And the amount of tokens and new altcoins that are being created is requiring so much more capital to go into the altcoin space for these assets to grow. And I mean, if we look over at the total 3, or we look at from an altcoin perspective, so total 3 is everything excluding BTC and ETH. Like if we look right back, we didn't really get too much higher than all-time highs from back in 2021, right? So, if you have the similar amount of market cap, but you have literally millions more coins, then of course a lot of these coins are not going to reach their all-time highs. Some of them might not even break through, from a lot of their corrections, right? And I mean, the ETH BTC chart is pretty ugly. Am I still holding my ETH? Yes. I've been buying ETH since $80. Like I continue to be bullish long term on the blockchain. I think the blockchain of ETH, it will continue to be a leader for governments, entities, anyone really wanting the most secure blockchain. But I do think that the layer 2 ecosystem has killed a lot of the marketing. I think it's killed a lot of the focus and attention on ETH. Do I see this inversing? I don't know. Maybe ETH just grinds high and so does BTC. Like, do we see this crazy growth altcoin period? Like, I do think there is a likelihood, but we're not going to see any of this sort of explosive growth on the altcoin side until the macro conditions get better. Have I been buying more ETH? No, I've still got about 18 or 20% of my portfolio in ETH. Pretty much because I bought so much so early, but it's been disappointing to say the least to see how Ethereum sort of played out, and hoping that we start to see some sort of work done by the foundation to really solidify itself as a more attractive investment, I think, for the market as more retail investors come back in. So, is the 4-year cycle dead? Potentially. Again, I think we're looking at different things now. I think the focus is not around the halving and things like that. Yes, it'll come back, and that narrative and speculation will come back. But for now, all eyes are on the US and funding and money supply and the stock market. And from a fear perspective, in the stock market, so much fear, right? A lot of people are very, very concerned about tomorrow. The market, in some ways, probably priced in a lot of this correction. But again, tomorrow's announcement could go either way. It could be a lot worse than what investors were predicting, and if so, I would be expecting a large sell-off, or it could be better, and the market's going a bit of a tear. Crypto always tends to lead the way because it's the most liquid, accessible asset. Especially over weekends. Interestingly enough, the announcement tomorrow is after trading hours in the stock market, so crypto will move first, and we're going to really see that happen really, really fast. And there hasn't been a lot of leakage in terms of what's going to happen tomorrow. A lot of reciprocal tariffs, a lot of things. But to see where we've come over the last 4 years, whether it be COVID, whether it be 3AC, BlockFi, FTX, and to see where we are now, like, I mean, I don't buy into the fact that we should be this fearful, honestly. Like, from a crypto perspective, like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, yes, okay, it hasn't played out how we would have hoped, but also everything in his promise has kind of happened, right? Whether it be the strategic Bitcoin reserve, whether it be reducing the regulatory oversight. There's been a lot of great things that have happened to the space that we were hoping for a long time, and it's allowing the space to grow, and I think people to be more confident in that this space is not going anywhere. I think what we really need to see now is, like, crypto really needs to come to the forefront and showcase what we've built. Like, what on earth have we actually built that is valuable, right? We've obviously got stable coins have been a big thing. We've got, DeFi that is there, that is very valuable, and I love DeFi. But there hasn't been really any real big sort of, what would you call it? Like, growth in the tech, or, any major new sort of announcements and things that the real world is using. Like, arguably the only thing that the real world, and I say the real world is, people outside of crypto that are utilizing is Bitcoin. Polymarket has come to fruition, externally. But again, Polymarket built on Polygon, and Polygon are both ether down, considerable amounts. Like, argue again that the value probably isn't accruing there for a software like for Polymarket. You've got stable coins. And that's kind of it, right? Like, what else have we really got to show for this? So it's, again, a lot of speculative value. I think a lot of the altcoins need to come to fruition on what is the value they provide to society. Some of the altcoins, these are some in my portfolio that I still own. Syrup is that DeFi play. I'm very bullish on Syrup. The TVL is nearly at 700 million, 800 million, continues to grow even in this market. Again, only a 100 mil market cap project. Unfortunately, again, the project hasn't had a lot of, I guess, discoverability in the market because of, all the attention has been on sort of meme coins and AI and whatnot. But I do think the market starts to trend back towards fundamentals, over the next year or two. Sui and Solana, big ones. I've used that as a strategy to offset my ETH. That's been, great performers. I got into Sol and Sui, a long time ago, and that's been great. I think the next gen layer one blockchains, including Hype, Hype's building a lot of great derivative financial markets. Look, I think these platforms have the best opportunity to really onboard even Sui from a user experience standpoint. That's why I like Sui, because you can actually use it. It's very easy to adopt and make sense of it. But I really am focusing my portfolio on strengthening, one, against BTC, but two, really focusing on those blockchain level assets, because at least we can have the better sort of availability for those blockchains to build these applications to hit the real world on top of, rather than trying to pick the horse in the race. Hit the horse track as an example. That's kind of how I look at this, and how I'm allocating my portfolio, particularly in uncertain periods of time. Risk to reward is really big, right? I don't want to go over allocating on altcoins, because you're really going to feel the hurt of that correction in the bull market. So, I think, do I have the kahunas to just, barrel into these altcoins and low cap coins, or just any altcoins right now and add to my positions? Look, I have added a little bit, but really I'm waiting until tomorrow. Okay. But as a reminder, some of the biggest opportunities have been to invest in these super fearful bearish conditions, right? Solana peaked at $250 back in late 2021. After FTX collapsed, it hit $8, like basically down like 90+%, and then went on this ginormous run back up to all-time highs and sort of corrected now. But, as a reminder, everyone had thrown in the towel on Solana. It was over. Throw it in, pack it up. It's dead in the water. And I'm hearing a lot of that around a lot of altcoins, including ETH, right? I just wanted to remind you all of how quickly things change in crypto. And this is where you can really make the opportunity. If you do have those assets that you can pick and you have conviction in, where I made a lot of my money was back in the metaverse, before the metaverse was really a thing. This was back before Facebook had renamed to Meta, and I allocated to 3 or 4 projects I thought had a lot of, potential back then. two sort of broke even, one went to zero, and one returned, 40x. Okay, so that's kind of what we're looking at when you're looking at these upcoming sectors. I've gone a little bit less risky in terms of, there's next gen layer ones and DeFi, but there are different things, meme coins and AI projects that are, extremely, extremely undervalued / down. However, you need to be selective because the market's not going to, bring everything back, straight away this time. I think a lot of projects won't come back. And this was one of the best trades we made was, this was a member post we made to our members back late 2023 around, not selling Solana, not throwing in the towel on these projects that we know have good fundamentals. And I'd throw ETH into here. I'd throw a lot of these good fundamental projects in as a reminder that, holding on and remaining patient is the reason we get rewarded so well when we go through these corrections. And I don't see this correction any different to any other. In fact, it's probably a far stronger correction, due to the fundamental things I just mentioned versus FTX blowing up or, COVID hitting, for example. So hold on to those assets, add if you want, but again, just be patient. As I said to one of these platinum clients the other day, you don't need to just jump into the opportunity right now. It's more just, maybe allocating a little bit if you've got some cash on the sideline, start to build those positions, but there's no need to just absolutely dive in, especially before tomorrow. Now, some of the mistakes I'm seeing people make, you can't really see. Can I move myself? There we go. Some of the mistakes I'm seeing a lot of our, audience make and just investors and some of our members make is, really not positioning a proper exit strategy. We had one of our platinum members, he sold 2 BTC at the peak back in November and bought a house. How epic's that? He took 400 or 500, or whatever, in AUD terms, 300K, off the top, more than that, 400K off the top late last year, was able to buy a house, right? How epic's that? To think back, and know that you made the right call and, when you're in profit and when you made those right things, you had a plan and you executed, amazing, right? Have that exit strategy in order, start to build that, right? Not having the proper support or coaching and just hoping things will get better. Obviously, that's what we do at Collective Shift. But honestly, having a research team has been the biggest thing that I've been able to utilize and have my analysts on chain fundamentals, have people around me to help, give different perspectives and give logic in an absolute crazy, noisy world. If you're just sitting there hoping things will get better, that's not the proper strategy. And I've been there and I said, this cycle more than ever is the reason why hope and just waiting for things to come back, in my opinion, is not going to work because of the volume of coins. There's so many coins this cycle that won't come back. And that's the, points 4 and 5 there around just holding too many altcoins, holding the wrong altcoins. A lot of people going way too risk on. Pull it back, add more BTC and allocate at the right times and just be patient. You don't need to do a lot during these periods of time, but you do need to look at the strategy and look at things to be ready for the next leg up, right? Not holding enough Bitcoin, I spoke about. Not having cash on the sidelines. I know that's a tough one for some people, but if you have cash on the sidelines or you have stables that you can deploy, it gives you so much more wiggle room. It gives you so much more flexibility to make better decisions, right? If you see opportunities, you can add to the market, you can lower your buy price. It's a really, really, really awesome thing. And then the other one is just not taking advantage of these opportunities. So when we do see the announcement tomorrow, making a call, are you going to start to position? This is where you can make a lot of money in the bull market by buying when there's a lot of fear, right? People, back when BTC was 110, 115K, whatever we got to, people were like, oh, I'm just gonna wait, I'll wait till we pull back to 80. We pull back to 80, and now people are like, oh, I'll wait to pull back till it gets to 60. Just remember those periods of times. It is the hardest to execute when it is super fearful. It is very hard to buy, but it is, when you are super greedy, it's very hard to sell. But if you really simplify it down, it is the best strategy. Allocation, again, portfolio allocation, as I mentioned, really, really important. On the left-hand side, if you invested $1 million 2 years ago, January 1st, and you had more BTC in your portfolio versus less BTC, and you added some of the 2017 coins and whatnot, you'd be up an extra $800,000, close to, right? Based on the fact that you had a lot more BTC, okay? That is a big, and also if you just had BTC, you'd be outperforming everyone, right? So I know it's boring, but I really want to emphasize that holding BTC right now is really, really important. And you want to have a large percentage of your portfolio in BTC to minimize the downside, your portfolio and some of those altcoins don't come back. And two, just the fact that it's the best performing asset, right? And we can't forget that. It's compounding at 40%. right? We really don't want to forget that. Update from last week, which I sent to some of our members as well, exactly what has played out just in terms of waiting for these announcements from the tariffs. We do have a lot of great bullish things, clear sentiment shift. This is what you get in our Platinum membership, just my updates and my investment thoughts, and you get to follow along, which can just really help a lot of you that are time poor, honestly, and don't have all the time to just be in the market 24/7. I sort of spoke about my strategy, but again, allocation over the last 12 months has really been around BTC. You can't go wrong, and don't bury your head in the sand hoping things will come back. You really need to allocate and sort of resurface that strategy when we have these corrections. Be patient. I don't think this correction's over, but tomorrow morning is going to be the day where we really figure out what on earth's going on, and I'll be adding more to my portfolio over the next little bit as we see more announcements come back from Mr. Trump himself. So hopefully that's been helpful to give you a bit of an insight on what I'm looking at. If you want my help and coaching, you can look at booking a call to see if it's a good fit for our Platinum program. You can head over to our website and see all the success stories on how I work with one-on-one with our clients, and essentially just get to see all of the things that I do with my portfolio. I help you with your portfolio. I give all of my 8 years of experience and insights to help you sort of grow and stay confident and sleep well at night, having an exit strategy, having a plan, and helping you, essentially navigate the markets without you having to do all the research yourself. So you can head over to the website and check that out. Otherwise, I'll continue to post these updates here on YouTube. Please leave me a subscribe if you enjoyed it. Share it with a friend, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks, guys.